Have you ever noticed how money seems to have a life of its own, flowing in and out of your hands faster than you can grasp it? You work, you plan, you dream about the life it could buy, and yet so often it slips away. Imagine, for a moment, holding a coin between your fingers and realizing that it's not the coin itself, but the choices you make with it that determine whether it multiplies or vanishes. This is the paradox of wealth, that something so tangible, so measurable, is ruled by forces we cannot see: our habits, our emotions, our beliefs. I want to tell you a story about a man named Ronald Red. He lived quietly in a small town in Vermont. Few noticed him. Few knew the quiet diligence with which he approached life. He drove an old car, dressed simply, and spent most of his time quietly reading newspapers in the local library. When he passed away, people were shocked, not because he had lived an unremarkable life, but because he left over $8 million to local charities. $8 million. He had never earned a fortune in the public eye, never taken wild risks, never flaunted wealth. What he had done, without drama or fanfare, was master the psychology of money. He understood patience, discipline, and the silent power of consistent, intentional actions. And yet, most of us, even those with significant incomes, fail to hold on to wealth. Why? Because it's not a problem of numbers, it's a problem of the mind. The mind is wired to seek comfort, to avoid pain, to chase immediate gratification. Have you ever noticed how you spend when you're anxious, or when you're trying to impress someone? Maybe it's a coffee, an impulsive gadget, a night out that seemed harmless at the time. Each choice seems small, yet over weeks, months, and years, these decisions compound. Money doesn't just vanish through bad investments. It vanishes through patterns, through the unexamined habits of your daily life. Consider the story of the great railroad tycoon, Cornelius Vanderbilt. He started life with almost nothing, working on ferries and small shipping jobs. But what set him apart wasn't just his ambition, it was his understanding of risk, patience, and opportunity. He understood that accumulating wealth is about more than earning. It is about observing, reflecting, and acting with foresight. Vanderbilt made bold investments, but he also mastered restraint. He avoided the traps of envy and impulsivity that catch so many people. And perhaps most importantly, he didn't just chase money. He studied the patterns of wealth, the cycles of markets, and the psychology of the people around him. Have you ever asked yourself why some people seem to acquire wealth effortlessly, while others struggle despite earning well? The truth is subtle. Most of us are reactive, not reflective. We respond to fear and desire rather than observe them. We see a sale, a trend, or a financial opportunity, and we jump, hoping to gain, rather than pausing to consider whether this action aligns with our long-term goals. And this is where most wealth disappears, between intention and action, between desire and discipline. Notice your own habits for a moment. When was the last time you bought something purely to feel better, or to keep up with someone else? When was the last time you invested or saved, not because you felt compelled, but because you truly understood the impact it would have over time? Wealth is patient, and yet so often we are impatient. Our brains are wired for now, not later. We are wired for the immediate thrill, not the long-term gain. And yet, there is hope, a method hidden in plain sight. If you can begin to observe yourself, to notice the triggers that lead to unnecessary spending, if you can embrace patience and consistency, your money begins to respond in ways you never imagined. Consider subscribing now to keep exploring these lessons, because understanding them in theory is one thing, but hearing them, revisiting them, letting them sink into your mind, is what begins to change your life. History is full of lessons waiting for the observant mind. Take the Dutch tulip mania in the 1600s, when tulip bulbs were traded at prices higher than the cost of houses. Millions of people were swept up in the frenzy, not because tulips were inherently valuable, but because of fear and desire. Fear of missing out, desire to gain quick wealth. Markets are just reflections of human psychology, repeated endlessly over centuries. And the more you understand human psychology, the more you understand how wealth is created, preserved, or destroyed. But psychology alone isn't enough. Action is required. Observing fear without letting it control you. recognizing envy without letting it dictate your choices, understanding scarcity without falling victim to panic. These are skills quietly learned, often without drama, often without applause, and they are available to anyone who is willing to reflect. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what habits in your life are quietly eroding your financial future? Is it impulsive spending? Is it ignoring long-term planning? Is it the subtle envy of what others have? Awareness is the first step toward mastery, and mastery is what turns fleeting wealth into lasting prosperity. Even small, consistent actions compound in ways that feel almost magical over time. Saving a fixed portion of your income, investing in low-cost, diversified assets, and avoiding debt traps may feel insignificant in the moment. But in years, decades even, the cumulative effect is astonishing. Ronald Read, Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, they all understood this. Wealth was never just about earning. It was about observing, understanding, and acting with intention. And so, as we move forward, I want you to carry this thought. Wealth is as much a reflection of your inner world as it is of the external economy. The question is, will you act consciously or continue on autopilot, letting emotion guide your financial life? And if you find yourself intrigued, captivated by the idea that your mindset can transform your finances, then subscribing now will ensure these insights keep flowing to you, helping you build not just knowledge, but wisdom. Have you ever paused to watch yourself make a financial decision and wondered why you did it? Perhaps it was the excitement of a potential gain, or the subtle fear of missing out, or even the quiet urge to impress someone, sometimes even yourself. These invisible forces shape the way money moves through your life. And the truth is, most people never stop to recognize them. Most people never question why they spend, why they invest, why they hold back, or why they take risks that seem to contradict their best interests. Take the story of Jesse Livermore, one of the most legendary stock traders in history. He began with almost nothing, learning the patterns of the market, understanding human emotion in ways few others did. He could read fear and greed like a language, predicting trends before they became obvious. And yet, despite his brilliance, he lost fortunes repeatedly because he underestimated his own emotions. Even those who understand the mechanics of wealth can be undone by the psychology of their own minds. Have you ever noticed how fear shapes your choices? Not in obvious ways like avoiding a risky investment, but in quiet, subtle ways, opting for comfort over opportunity, settling for immediate relief instead of long-term gain. Fear convinces us that a little now is safer than a lot later, and our brains, wired for survival, agree with this instinct. And scarcity plays a similar trick. When resources feel limited, our decisions narrow, we prioritize short-term security over long-term growth, and often we fail to act at all. And envy, have you felt it? That quiet nudge, comparing yourself to someone else's lifestyle, their possessions, their success. It seems harmless at first, just a fleeting thought. But envy can drive reckless decisions, impulsive spending, or dangerous speculation. It's subtle, but it's a force that has toppled empires and bankrupted fortunes, not because the money disappeared, but because the mind guiding it became unmoored. Now, imagine if you could recognize these forces before they dictated your choices. Imagine if you could pause, even for a moment, and ask yourself, am I acting out of clarity or impulse? Am I responding to fear, scarcity, or envy, or am I making a deliberate choice aligned with my long-term goals? This kind of self-awareness transforms not only your financial decisions, but your life itself. Consider the story of Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. What made him extraordinary wasn't just his intelligence or his luck, it was his temperament. Buffett understood human psychology better than most economists. He knew when fear would drive the market down and when greed would inflate it. And he knew that the secret to wealth wasn't in chasing every opportunity. It was in patience, in restraint, in acting only when the conditions were right and the mind was calm. But you don't need to be Warren Buffett to benefit from these lessons. The principles are accessible to anyone willing to observe, to reflect, and to act with awareness. Small choices compound over time, not because they are spectacular, but because they are consistent. saving a fraction of your income each month, resisting the urge to indulge in fleeting luxuries, investing steadily, and observing your emotional triggers. All of this builds a quiet, unstoppable force. Have you ever noticed how easily money flows away during moments of stress or excitement? When we are anxious, we shop. When we are overjoyed, we indulge. When we are envious, we compare. And yet, when we are calm, reflective, patient, we act with purpose. The difference is subtle, almost invisible, but over years it defines the difference between fleeting wealth and lasting prosperity. Even the wealthiest individuals understand this. The richest people are often the quietest, the most observant, the least reactive. They don't chase the noise of the world. They respond only to the signal, the patterns that matter over decades. And this is where you can begin to change your own relationship with money. Not by earning more, not by taking risks blindly, but by understanding the invisible forces at work in your mind and life. Pause for a moment. Reflect on your own habits. Do you notice patterns? Do you see the times when your emotions guide your choices more than reason does? Awareness alone is a form of power, and power, once understood, can be transformed into action. This is the point where many people falter. They understand intellectually, yet fail to apply it consistently. This is why subtle reinforcement is so valuable. Revisiting these lessons, reminding yourself to pause, reflect, and act intentionally, creates a framework for consistent, disciplined decisions. And if you want these insights to continue guiding you, consider subscribing, so that each time you listen, these principles can settle deeper into your mind, quietly shaping your approach to wealth and life. Think of history again. During the 2008 financial crisis, many who appeared wealthy on paper lost everything almost overnight. Not because they lacked knowledge or skill, but because fear and panic dictated their decisions. Markets are mirrors of human psychology, repeating cycles of greed, fear, envy, and hope over and over. And you, by observing your own psychology, can navigate these cycles more skillfully than most. Even in smaller, quieter ways, these lessons manifest. Take the regular rhythm of everyday spending. It is tempting to dismiss it as insignificant. A coffee here, a gadget there, a subscription that goes unused. Individually, it feels minor. But cumulatively, it represents thousands of dollars leaving your control each year, and more importantly, it reflects the patterns that govern your decision-making. By noticing, adjusting, and redirecting these small flows, you begin to build the architecture for lasting wealth. And beyond the practical, there is the deeper lesson. Wealth is not just money. It is the freedom to act, to choose, to live aligned with your values and priorities. The psychology of wealth teaches that money follows clarity, patience, and self-awareness. Those who understand this are rarely anxious or reactive. They move with quiet confidence, not because they are fearless, but because they understand the forces that would otherwise unsettle them. Pause again. Reflect. How would it feel to approach every financial decision with this kind of awareness, this kind of calm? How different would your life be if your choices were deliberate rather than reactive, aligned rather than scattered? Every moment offers the opportunity to observe, to adjust, and to improve. And the more you reinforce this habit, the more natural it becomes, until financial clarity is no longer a goal. It is a state of being. These principles are subtle, yet profound. They are not taught in schools or shouted from headlines. They are lived, learned, and reflected upon quietly. And they are accessible to you right now. By subscribing and continuing this journey, you allow these insights to accompany you, to settle into your awareness, to gently guide your thoughts, decisions, and ultimately your wealth. As we move forward together, imagine your life as a river. Money, opportunities, challenges, they all flow like water. You can attempt to dam it, divert it, or chase every ripple, but without awareness, the current sweeps past you, unnoticed and unappreciated. Most people react to the river rather than learning to navigate it. Yet, those who master their own psychology, who pause and observe before taking action, are able to ride the current rather than be carried away by it. Consider the life of Benjamin Franklin, a man who lived over 2 centuries ago, yet whose financial wisdom is timeless. Franklin understood the subtleties of human behavior, of patience, of compound growth, not just in money, but in knowledge, habits, and relationships. He practiced frugality. He understood the power of deliberate decision-making, and he knew that a single impulsive choice could undo months or years of careful planning. Franklin's life reminds us that wealth is not just accumulation. It is preservation, reflection, and conscious action. Have you ever noticed how often regret follows impulsive choices? The purchase you later question, the investment you panicked out of, the opportunity you didn't seize. Regret is not a moral judgment. It is a teacher. It whispers lessons we often ignore, to pause, to observe, to act with intent. And if you allow these lessons to sink in, regret transforms from a shadow into a guide, illuminating the patterns that govern your financial life. Even modern examples echo these truths. Consider the entrepreneurs who rise rapidly, accumulating vast fortunes, only to watch them dissipate within a few years. It is not the market alone that claims their wealth. It is the combination of emotion, impatience, and the subtle neglect of self-awareness. Greed, fear, envy, pride. These invisible forces shape financial outcomes as surely as any economic factor. Understanding them is not optional, it is essential. Pause. Reflect. When have your emotions quietly dictated your choices? When have small impulses turned into patterns that cost you more than you realized? Awareness is the first step toward mastery, and mastery is what allows you to build wealth that lasts, not just in your bank account, but in your life. Now think about the quiet disciplines of everyday life. The small savings, the modest investments, the decision to avoid unnecessary debt, the conscious pause before spending. Individually, they seem minor, almost insignificant. But over time, they compound. They grow quietly, invisibly, like a tree extending its roots before you even notice the shade it provides. The mind that understands this, that internalizes this rhythm, begins to act differently, to see opportunities others miss, to navigate challenges with calm. And yet, even with all this knowledge, the journey is not easy. Life will challenge your patience, tempt your impulses, and test your resolve. But each moment of reflection, each pause before action, each deliberate choice strengthens the mental muscles that build enduring wealth. It is here that true power lies, not in luck, not in income, not in flashy success, but in the quiet, deliberate mastery of self. Have you noticed how those who seem financially free are rarely frantic, rarely reactive? Their lives are marked by clarity, patience, and a subtle awareness of patterns. This is no coincidence. They understand that the external world responds to the internal state. Money, like a loyal reflection, mirrors your habits, your choices, your psychology. By cultivating self-awareness, by observing your fears, desires, and impulses, you begin to shape the flow of wealth rather than merely reacting to it. And so, as you listen now, allow yourself to reflect. What would it mean to approach every financial decision with this kind of clarity? To pause before acting, to recognize the emotional currents at play, to act deliberately rather than reactively? The most powerful investment you can make is not in stocks or real estate. It is in yourself, in your awareness, in your understanding of the forces that shape your life. Imagine a future where your money works with you, not against you. Where impulses no longer dictate your choices, where fear and envy no longer drive your decisions. Where small, consistent actions compound quietly, invisibly, creating a foundation for freedom, security, and growth. This is not a distant dream. It is accessible to anyone willing to observe, reflect, and act intentionally. And as you continue on this journey, know that you are not alone. Each story, each historical lesson, each quiet reflection shared here is a step toward understanding, a guidepost for action. By subscribing, you allow these lessons to accompany you, gently reinforcing the habits, the awareness, and the psychology that build lasting wealth. Not through hype or urgency, but through steady, mindful reflection, the kind that transforms not just your finances, but your life. Pause for a moment. Breathe. Reflect on what you've learned so far. Which habits will you change? Which impulses will you observe rather than obey? Which long-term choices will you prioritize over fleeting temptations? Wealth is not a single event. It is a continuous, deliberate practice, and every conscious decision strengthens the foundation you are building. As you close your eyes and imagine the years ahead, remember that every thoughtful decision, every pause before acting, every reflection on your emotional triggers compounds silently and powerfully. Ronald Read, Warren Buffett, Rockefeller, Franklin, they all understood that the greatest fortunes are built not in the spotlight, but in the quiet mastery of mind and habit. And this mastery is available to you right here, right now. So let this be your invitation. Embrace reflection, observe your patterns, act with intention, and allow these principles to guide you. The river of wealth is always flowing, and those who navigate it consciously are the ones who find not just money, but freedom, peace, and purpose. And if you want these insights to continue unfolding, to accompany you on this journey of understanding, subscribe now. Let them settle into your mind and quietly transform the way you think, act, and live. Finally, remember this: wealth is a mirror. It reflects your habits, your choices, your awareness. Most people never keep it because they never understand themselves. But you have the power to change that. Pause, reflect, act intentionally, and watch as the currents of money begin to flow with you, not against you. And in this quiet, deliberate mastery, you will find not just financial security, but the freedom to live life on your own terms.